Thank you for your patience.
Everyone, I just spoke with
or call this meeting to order, sorry, at 8:04 a.m. All right, very good. Ms. Contra, can we go through a quick roll call, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Sandoval. Thank you very much. Mrs. Doan.
Here.
Mrs. Seja Martinez.
Here.
Mr. Sandoval.
Here.
Mrs. Underhill.
Here.
Mrs. Pingarelli. So it looks like possibly Mrs. Pingarelli is still logging on. I have spoken with her this morning.
Hey, Kim, I'm on.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Mrs. Pingarelli.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Pingarelli.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Okay, that said, we'll move on to section 2, opening exercises, moment of silence, and Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Reynolds, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And during our moment of silence, once again, I definitely want to keep everybody throughout our district, our families, all those impacted by the pandemic, and really positive thoughts to district leadership, as we look to begin learning in Pusd, and again, sending them our thoughts and support. So, Dr. Reynolds, when you're comfortable, you can begin the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to section 3, public comments. Ms. Contra, any public comments addressing items that are not included on the agenda?
Thank you, President Sandoval. No, we do not have any public comment not related to the agenda item.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like all the public comment that we do have is tied to 4.1, which is reopening of schools for in-person instruction. What I'd like to do is what we've done in the past is read our public comment to this action item. I do want to remind everyone of our protocol with regard to public comments. Again, we are grateful that individuals leverage this line item to ensure that the voices are heard and make sure that the board and district leadership and teachers and staff, understand, thoughts from multiple lenses. So thank you for that. That said, we do have a 3-minute time limit, which we will adhere to. So with that said, Ms. Contra, if you wouldn't mind reading all public comments, that'd be great.
Thank you, President Sandoval. This morning, the first public comment is from Lysandra Olivo Ramirez. How will the schools be keeping the bathrooms cleaned? On your emails and website, you speak of cleaning countertops, doorknobs, etc. What about bathrooms in between usage? Who on campus will have the job to oversee that? The next public comment comes from Gina Roll. Teachers and staff have no higher rate of getting COVID-19 than any other employee or profession. There are no studies that disprove that. Teachers are essential workers who need to go back to the classroom. Psychologists, doctors, sociologists, pediatricians, behavioral health experts, and many other top experts all agree children need to be in the classroom. Online education, as it has been and will be delivered, is simply ineffective. Most children have not had any special services since February or March, which are guaranteed to them by law. I smell many lawsuits as a result. There is a price tag for poor academics, more psychological harm by being locked down, food instability in low-income households, lack of physical exercise, no supervision while parents work, continued increase in adolescent overdoses, etc. Even Arizona public college students are returning in August who are at greater risk population than children, with professors often being older than K-12 teachers. I would like to see the research that shows teachers' lives are in any more danger than those who return to work in any other occupation. I have tried, it doesn't exist. Children simply are not super spreaders, as shown in study after study, and have a flu mortality rate higher than that of COVID-19. With that, it must be about staff and teacher safety, right? Teachers and staff, again, have no higher COVID rates. Teachers can self-distance in the classroom, literally staying in their classroom nearly all day, and staff can mask up like every other worker in our state. Grocery stores and banks can figure out how to put up Lexan dividers, and schools have had 4 months to figure out the same for staff. What other businesses or industry in our state have remained closed because the employees refuse to go back to work? None. Teachers and administrators continue to get paid whether they're working or not. Who's going to pay parents to not work and instead educate their kids all day? Why is it okay to have in-person child care center staff working but not teachers? Boys and girls clubs, tutoring centers, perfectly fine. Even employees at kids' entertainment centers have been back at work and have had no greater positive rates. So why are teachers any different? As some may make the case of an Arizona teacher who just died from COVID-19 complications, there is no indication she contracted the illness from the classroom. Teachers expect the mail to be delivered even when a beloved mailman passes from COVID-19. There are no demands that the post offices in our state cease operations as a result. Teachers also expect grocery stores to be open, gas stations to operate, power companies to supply electricity, restaurants to be open, and all other services available when they need it. Employees in these businesses have just as high of a chance of contacting COVID, but they must go to work. In-classroom learning is essential. It's time to listen to research and science and get these kids back into the classrooms just like every other Western country already has. And some of the nation's largest school districts like Orange County will be in August. The next public comment comes from Brooke Martin. Hello, Governing Board. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication. I'm a parent to 3 children that all want to be back in the classroom. My son starts kindergarten this year, and it breaks my heart he has to start school this way. I feel that with school getting pushed back, it doesn't give a fair right to those who want to come back. You're giving us the option for virtual or in classroom, but it feels very one-sided. If someone is not comfortable coming back to school, they don't have to. That is why there is an option. But don't keep pushing it back for those of us who trust you to keep our children safe. I know as well as you know the best place for children to learn is inside the classroom. Shouldn't you wait to decide once you have the actual numbers of children who want to come back? If several children choose virtual, it might make social distancing a lot easier, and in classroom classes much easier to make it a safe learning environment. Many feel children planning to come back to school do not have a choice. The individuals who are wanting to push back school can choose to stay online. They don't have to come back in person, but allow us parents that know our children need in person the right of choice. Thank you. I know your decisions cannot be easy at this time of uncertainty. Best of luck. The next public comment is from Amanda Glenn. I am a mom with 4 kids here in Pusd School District. I am also a substitute teacher who is highly involved with our school. My husband is a doctor who works at 3 different hospitals in the area. We have now been able to hear firsthand what it's like. Yes, we have high numbers. Yes, we are struggling right now in Arizona, but there will be deeper issues if we don't get our kids physically back in the classroom. There will be more abuse, depression, anxiety, social anxiety, obesity, and so much more mental issues if we don't get these kids back with their peers and teachers. These kids need to get off of social media, Fortnite, and back to learning and interacting with kids. What is different about March and now is the fact that we know how to wear a mask and social distance ourselves. I believe you should put the school on a track system. 3 weeks a child is in the classroom and 1 week off to virtually learn. You can limit the class size by every family and student being on a different track and making sure you have no more than 18 in a classroom so you can social distance the chairs. You can split the school in half and have half of them go on Monday, Tuesday, clean on Wednesday, and the other half of the school go on Thursday and Friday. Our teachers need to mask up and teach our kids. It's a must. Give families an option to stay home and virtually learn. So many possibilities. We can't just bail out on these kids and their future. We can't. Let's make something happen and not just follow after the Deer Valley School District. Let's make it happen in Peoria. The next public comment is from Danielle Arcady. I am really disappointed in what I have seen so far from Florida Virtual. Why can't we have actual instruction from the teacher like so many other schools are doing? I absolutely do not want to be the teacher again like the springtime online learning, which was so difficult in my household. How hard is it to have set times for teachers and students to log on together and teach? The next public comment comes from Jan Arnold. It is imperative that children return to in-class school 5 days a week with no mask and limited distancing. There is no science behind the wearing of masks. OSHA states in its guidelines that cloth and surgical masks do not achieve any COVID-19 safety. OSHA demands oxygen levels in air must be at 21%, yet wearing even thin masks drops the O2 below acceptable levels. Children have nearly 0% chance of getting or spreading the disease. Compromised children and teachers can be isolated. All others continue education as before. Science and pediatricians support full return to school. Let's follow the science. The next public comment comes from Mark Huff. Get our kids physically back in school. They missed an entire quarter of last year, and they will only fall further behind academically if they are not in the classroom. Distance learning is not an option for grades 1 through 8. They need to learn how to learn from a teacher who is physically present before they can try to tackle online classes. The next public comment comes from Lisa Connolly. I urge you to allow students to return to school as soon as possible. If other parents are concerned, let them opt to keep their child online. Our students need all things that are associated with schooling, not just self-guided learning. They are losing socialization skills and are suffering mentally. Teachers are essential workers and need to report back to work, as all other essential workers have been throughout this pandemic. If there are teachers that are concerned due to their age and pre-existing conditions, etc., they should have the option to continue as an online teacher then. Do what is right and bring the kids back to the classrooms. The next public comment is from Jason Freed. Honorable board members, I am a parent of 2 children who attend Sunrise Mountain High School. I would like to encourage you to have our children back in school ASAP. Masks should be optional unless mandated by the governor. Socialization and the teacher interaction is a huge part of the educational development. The risk of children getting COVID is very low, and the risk of them dying from COVID is almost non-existent. There's a better chance that they would die of the common flu. If teachers are worried about getting sick, they might need to find a different profession. The children's needs are what should be top priority. Schools exist to educate children, not to employ teachers. Teachers are valuable and important, but there are many jobs that involve risk. We don't change the job for the employee, we change the employee for the customers. If parents want to do online learning with their children, I am fine with that being a choice, but my children prefer in-person learning and the socializing with other students. There are very good online homeschool options for about $200 a month, which are teacher-led. Hopefully, you will be refunding the people's tax money if you are only providing an online service. I would hate to think that the educators would gouge their constituents. We already got cheated in the spring. Are you going to disappoint us again in the fall? Thank you for your time. Next public comment is from Emily McNutt. I would like to express my deep concern at the Peoria Unified School District's decision to reopen schools. Frankly, there is no way to do that safely. To do so would put teachers, students, and faculty at risk. Please reconsider. The next public comment is from Chloe Stern. There are too many unknowns in which students, teachers, and faculty will not be kept safe. As someone who has experienced COVID-19, there will be too many to put at risk and too many who will not make it out alive. What happens if a teacher is exposed? Will they be paid during quarantine? Will all of the students be required to miss 14 days of school since they were also exposed? Too many questions and not enough safe and healthy answers. Arizona is a high risk right now due to the actions of opening too early. It is too early for schools to open. Next public comment is from veteran Pammy Upton, RN. Hello, I do feel children need to be in school and have a great idea. Start slow, like in school maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and at home with work the other 2 to see how it goes. Next public comment is from Cherry McCloskey. Good afternoon. I have comments on 3 topics, all related to the return to school plan. First, we have about 40,000 students in our district. If half of them are attending in class, that will be 20,000 kids we will be putting in close quarters for 7 hours a day, then sending back into the community 5 days a week. Many of these kids have parents who are working in healthcare or with the public. They will be exposed to COVID and they will be carriers. We saw how numbers spiked when large groups gathered for protests and rallies. I do not believe with good conscience that we should gather these kids for several hours a day and then send them back into the community every day. I feel we should commit to online learning until there is a significant drop in numbers, which will most likely be several months. Some of the feedback that I am getting is concerning. Some people are more concerned about what to do with kids than they are about the community. I get it. I'm very worried about my son, but it is selfish. Does this mean our state would be releasing hundreds of thousands of students 5 days a week into the community? As a top-rated school district, we should step up and do what is right. Our children will overcome this. History has shown children overcome difficult times. We have tried to keep our son busy and engaged. He connects with friends online. Is it perfect? No, but we are doing our part to help during this pandemic. Second, I would like to see our district offer in-person connections and activities for students choosing online learning. The kids could meet outside on the school fields, play kickball, do exercises, get loud, and act goofy with their friends. Once or twice a week would be plenty. Third, we have a group of students that do not have an environment for school at home. This needs to be addressed. It is important. Please try to come up with a way for those kids to have a place to learn. They could go to school and have a desk or a cubby in a class, all with adequate space and minimal interaction. There should be a nominal fee, and DES might cover the fee for the families in need. I think our district should make this a priority. I realize our schools are not babysitters, but some kids will not get the education or attention they need unless they are in class. Last, your changes and delays are frustrating. Every meeting we hear about your sincere concern, and you tell us how you know we are frustrated and anxious. It is time to decide the plan and start on the path to stability. Let's worry about getting back in class when the numbers are better and stay better. I'm asking you to please make the decision to have the students learn online. You have a great program. Focus on a way to have the students connect with each other in person a couple of hours a week, and also focus on the students who need a place to learn during the day with appropriate supervision, equipment, and tutors. Thank you. Next public comment is from Cassio Savarino. Reopening of schools in person. Any attempt to reopen schools for in-person contact without a minimum of 2 successful weeks of a downward trend of deaths and cases of COVID would be a dereliction of your duty to the most important job you have, that of keeping the students and staff safe. We should not only have a downward trend, but a positive test rate of under 5%. I know this is science, and we have far too many people who believe science is a conspiracy theory, but science doesn't care. Other nations and some states have followed the guidelines and are working their way back to something close to normal. Arizona has been an international embarrassment. As an institution of education, please do your part to combat this and do your job to keep the community safe. Next public comment is from Danielle Wiley. Thank you so much for considering comments from the public on this very important issue on returning to school. I know this has been a very chaotic and difficult time for those of you who have to make big decisions. I'm writing to you both as a parent and a teacher. I have 2 children who are students at Liberty High School, and I taught kindergarten in this district for 5 years. As a parent, I can tell you that my kids are struggling. They are struggling to stay connected to their peers, struggling to find a purpose, and struggling to keep their spirits up and make sense of the world that has crashed down around them. It's not just my kids either. I have seen their friends and classmates deteriorate before my eyes. Kids that were once cheerful and outgoing are now apathetic and withdrawn. They have trouble sleeping, concentrating, and I know of at least one suicide attempt. I don't mean to sound dramatic, but what I am seeing scares me. They need structure, routine, and the challenge that comes from school. These kids need to get back into the classroom. Children were not meant to live and learn in isolation. As a teacher, I am also worried for the younger students. As I said, I taught kindergarten. I have had kids come into my classroom who already knew their ABCs and could spell their own names, and even some who could read a few sight words. These are not the kids that have me concerned. I am worried about the kids who don't get that attention at home and the ones who don't know the difference between a letter and a number, the ones who can't hold a pencil or know which way to hold a book. We know these kids are the most at-risk ones who need the early intervention the most. These skills can't adequately be taught over Zoom. 5- and 6-year-old children can't log themselves into their laptops and pursue their education. These vulnerable kids need to be at school too. They need hands-on experiences with letters and words. They need to paint and use Play-Doh to count and compare numbers. They need the connection of a teacher who gets down on their level and encourages them to try again and gives them a hug or a high five when they get it right. I know for a fact that Pusd is full of teachers just like that, and most of them have told me they want to get back to their kids as soon as they can. I know the health and well-being of the kids, teachers, and staff are the highest importance to the district. As a parent and former employee, I am so glad for that. We are learning more about how kids are affected by COVID-19 every day, and one thing that seems to be consistent is how low-risk kids are in both contracting the virus and spreading it. Schools all over Europe and parts of Asia have reopened safely with very few cases of transmission among students and no documented cases of student-to-teacher transmission. Additionally, because of the district's foresight, teachers and students who are at higher risk of COVID have the option to teach and learn online to mitigate their exposure even more. I appreciate the approach that the district has taken to allow parents to choose between full-time in-person learning or virtual learning. I know that it has required a great deal of work on the part of the administrators, district staff, educators, and the members of the board. We have options that other districts have not given their parents. I applaud Pusd for that. I am asking you to continue the brave and important work you have done and open the schools as yes.
We have reached our time.
Thank you. The next public comments from Natalie Mast. I'm interested in additional information for pre-K. Will any pre-K instruction just be delayed indefinitely? If there isn't an online option, will there be an option for parents of 3-year-olds to simply delay that registration until next school year without reapplying? Will those registered for pre-K be billed for August and September? I've seen no information on any of this so far, so that any additional information here would be helpful as we plan for school or for alternate childcare. Next public comment is from David Gillespie. Too soon to reopen. Yes, younger kids account for a smaller percentage of affected victims, but they go home to family members who are much more vulnerable. Older siblings, parents, and especially grandparents, and at that point, they will share whatever they have picked up. Try looking past the near picture and watch for the extended contamination. The next public comment is from Eric Burge. Hello to the board, teachers, guardians, and administrators. Now that it is known that COVID-19 is spread by students, kills students, and can cause long-term damage to the heart and other organs in the form of multi-system inflammatory syndrome, it is prudent to do what Peoria has always done best and take care of its own. This means in-person school can wait. Taking care of our own also means protecting employees. Based on the past month's summer school, it's undeniable that teachers will be infected and some won't recover. And it's undeniable that students will suffer at the funerals of their teachers. I wonder what our plan is when an outbreak occurs at a school. What happens to teachers and students exposed and quarantined? Will all students in an affected school migrate to Florida virtual, or is contact tracing to identify exposure in place district-wide? These questions alone illustrate the problems of returning during a pandemic. As those responsible for the lives and well-being of our children, we have a sacred task. Let's not abdicate it. The next public comment is from Jeff and Crystal Altenbach. Hello, this is Jeff and Crystal Altenbach from Peoria, Arizona. We have a senior and sophomore daughters due to attend Liberty High School in August. As a 28-year veteran of the dental industry and a 12-year veteran of the medical industry, we believe it's time for the kids to go back to school. There is not a more essential thing in this country that needs to happen on time than going back to school. Bacteria and viruses have been with us since the beginning of time, and they will not go away ever. Many, many prominent doctors and scientists are urging us to get back to life. They all know you cannot possibly hide from nature. To think that we can is actually arrogant. The coronavirus epidemic, in our opinion, has been largely created by our leaders at the time for unknown reasons. Looking at the every year death rate in the U.S. of dying in a car accident, which is 35,000 per year, dying from a pharmaceutical prescribed drug, 100,000 per year, you would have thought by now we would have shut down our roads and doctors' offices, but it has never been a discussion point. Statistically speaking, there is not a significant increase in the amount of overall deaths in 2020. How is it that possible if we have a pandemic going on right now? Humans have always become and remained healthy by eating correctly, exercising, and making good health decisions. Why is there almost zero talk of the media and how to boost your immune system to fight the infections of a virus? Why is the only way to stay healthy in the media is to stay home and wear a mask? When a person decides to dig into the real story of COVID-19 and not be afraid what they are going to find, you can see with a little critical thinking and common sense is that there is something else going on here. Regardless, our kids need to get back to school and exercise their minds and interact with their friends. It is the most healthy thing we can do for them in our community. Thank you so much for taking the time to read. The next public comment is from Katie Fuller. Please consider opening to live instruction as soon as the executive orders allow. Our family is willing to take the risk of COVID because it is less than the risk of the mental and emotional learning at home. Our kids need the teachers who are gifted to teach and need the routine and need to see other students. We totally understand at-risk families staying at home, and we love that the district is offering this new option. The teachers who are also high risk of complications can help those families. I truly believe there are teachers willing to go live. Do not just listen to the loud and fearful teachers. We understand the fear is real. Hard to explain to our kids that their brother leaves the house each day to go to work in a grocery store and interacts with way more than a classroom. What if store employees were not willing to leave for work? Our kids all just had their annual checkups with the pediatrician, and she agreed schools can open live instruction. We appreciate the fact that PUSD is waiting for the governor before jumping to a decision like several districts have already. Taking a risk and opening before other districts could draw more students. Families are ready to continue school live. I will sign whatever legal form needed to take all the liabilities away from the district if an outbreak occurred. Thank you again. The next public comment is from Kim Adicott. I am writing as a concerned citizen, parent, and former PUSD teacher. What we are doing to our kids is not right. I have been part of this district for over 20 years, and I am appalled at how we are causing irreparable damage to our students by not allowing them to attend in-person school. There is just not enough data to warrant what is happening. I have multiple resources that back this claim. You may contact me for my resources. Students need to be in school. They need to be in-person teachers, sports, clubs, friends, pep rallies, graduations, and celebrations. We have already taken so much away from them, and this must stop. You are listening to a very small majority of people that want online and to live in fear. And for those people, great, do it, have online school, but don't punish the rest of us. We want to go back to school. Take a stand and do what is right for our kids. Stop making this political. There is no room for that when it comes to our kids. The next public comment is from Jill Malorani. Good morning, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, and Superintendent Dr. Reynolds. I am asking you to please keep our schools closed for at least the first semester, and more importantly, to do not offer a choice to parents when it is safe to reopen. You are creating two campuses at every school, an in-person and an online group of students at every grade level. These two groups will have different experiences, both socially and educationally, creating bullying issues in previously well-adjusted and emotionally stable students. You can already see that bullying takes place on your own Facebook page. The parents that choose online are considered scared, and the in-seat parents are deemed unsafe. I am not scared. My job as a parent is to protect my children. I would not send them to school under the threat of a school shooting, and I will not send them to school to get COVID or even worse. Multi-inflammatory syndrome. I truly feel as though people think they can pretend their way out of this, and we cannot. Just opening the schools does not mean it will be normal. Imagine the guilt and the mental anguish a child will feel if they get their teacher or friend sick, or how they will feel if they never see that teacher or friend again. Meanwhile, we will have wasted precious dollars putting in everyone needs to come back at one time, a unified choice for our unified district. Thank you for the countless hours you each have spent making the best decision during this unprecedented time. I wish you the very best and your families. The next public comment comes from Bob Smith. Dear PUSD board members and Superintendent Dr. Jason Reynolds, it is important to stay online for Q1. Yes, parents want their students back in school, but just like what is going on with Arizona and masks, people don't think of other people. Some may look at it as, I have had the kids since March and I am ready to send them back. The other group is the ones that my 6-year-old wants to go back and see their friends. Parents should know upfront that school will not look like it did last year. It will look more like we are running the military. Students will be limited by whom is by them and trying to social distance. Lunch and playground will be extremely limited. Interaction with the teacher will be limited because most teachers under their mask are fearful for their life. The teacher will be asking themselves, could this student be a carrier? Did one of their parents have it? Or did they go to that long-awaited play date at a friend's house? What about that house they visited? What about the relative that they just visited over the weekend? These are great questions of concern. But it is easier to send a soldier than yourself into battle. Just think for one moment your risk of having a teacher in front of 36 plus students for 7 hours a day and breathing the same air. It is zero to you. We only have each other in this crazy world. Do you think parents would have a change of heart if they thought for a moment that the teacher standing at the front of the room has a family, a life themselves, and that they are at greater risk? Are teachers disposable? Can you guarantee each student's safety that they will not contract the virus or spread it to their family at home? How long do you think it will take for schools to close down? It is not a matter of if, but when COVID gets into our schools and families. Stay online for Q1 and wait for Arizona numbers to improve. The next public comment is from Chevy Christensen. Both of my parents are public school teachers and my mother is a teacher here in PUSD. I am urging you to decide that the entire first quarter remains online for everyone due to the inevitable collapse of what a normal classroom looks like and the lives that are at risk. Normal will not exist with the necessary guidelines. It will look more like a military camp. Students will not be able to play games at recess or sit next to each other and talk at lunch. The teacher cannot approach a student at their desk for one-on-one help. The necessary hand washing and cleaning surfaces will take away from instruction time. Group activities and doing work with a partner will disappear. We all know that children love to be close to their friends and they will have trouble keeping their masks on. So teachers will have to focus on trying to enforce these guidelines, and education will become the second priority. This is a huge responsibility to hand to the teachers, and you are asking them now to be the guardians of health and safety in the classroom when it cannot be guaranteed. Furthermore, returning to school would damage social and emotional well-being. How can a child and their family deal with having to leave the classroom to quarantine if they are exposed? How can children deal with the loss of a classmate or teacher due to COVID-19? There will be constant disruptions of quarantining, sickness, and even death in your schools. It will happen. Maximum precautions can be taken, but they are not a guarantee. You cannot say that the number of students and teachers that will contract COVID and lose their lives from it is small. No number or percentage larger than zero is small. Many are already in high-risk age groups, with 1/5 of teachers being older than 55 and the average teacher age being 40. Otherwise, healthy children and adults have contracted the virus here in Arizona and either suffered long-term health effects or have passed away. Teachers are not disposable. When a teacher contracts the virus, they will have to worry about having enough sick days, and if not, they will be docked from their already slim pay. Then a substitute will now be administering instruction, and the students will now be worrying about their sick teacher. Then what if the substitute becomes exposed to the virus? It is a vicious cycle that disrupts the flow of the classroom. With Arizona's high cases and death rate, it will spread throughout the schools and force them to inevitably close. Postponing in-person school will not be forever, but this is not the time to dive into a risky environment in which a safety cannot be guaranteed. Right now, lives are at stake and we are part of the new normal. We need to get this right the first time and value the lives of teachers and students, and remember they are safer at home. The next public comment is from Deborah Decker. Pusd school board members, as a longtime Peoria resident and now a guardian and grandparent of a high school student, I urge you to open up the district schools to in-person learning by August 17th. As I personally learned this past spring, the majority of kids do not do well with virtual and e-learning. We have 8 grandchildren attending private, charter, and public schools here in Arizona. When everything shut down in March, each of those kids basically quit studying the entire last 2 months of the school year, a clear indicator of the need for in-person academic involvement. Our children and teens, our children and teens also require interactions for their health and happiness, for the positive mental and emotional stimulation that comes with face-to-face contact. Students need to be inside our schools buildings with their friends, teachers, coaches, and staff for optimal learning, in addition to the simple enjoyment they derive from playing sports and having fun through extracurricular activities. By delaying the return to the school campus, you would be cheating our children of so much. Don't fail them. Thank you. The next public comment is from Amanda Babb. Good evening. I believe that education is critical and teachers are essential workers. Students should be able to go to school in person this fall if parents want that choice. According to recent findings, kids only account for 2% of all coronavirus cases, and data has shown that the child-to-child transmission of coronavirus rarely occur. Multiple pediatricians support sending children back to school. Online instruction was substandard at the end of the year, and many kids will fall far behind if they are not in the classroom. The next public comment is from David Farrow. To the members of the Peoria Unified Governing Board, I wish you a good morning. My name is David Farrow. I am a lieutenant with the Peoria Police Department. I supervise our special enforcement section, which includes the school resource officers. I am speaking to you this morning not in my official capacity, but as the father of an amazing 7-year-old boy named Chase. Chase is nonverbal and is on the autism spectrum. By all appearances, Chase is an excellent physical specimen. It does not take long, however, to understand that he requires constant one-on-one assistance. Over the past 2 years, Chase has attended Frontier Elementary. During that time, my wife and I have formed excellent working relationships with Principal Mark Stutzman. There have been some hurdles we've had to overcome, but with Principal Stutzman's assistance, we have been able to manage. In his class, Chase has been assigned to a one-on-one aide on a daily basis based on his communication hurdles and the fact that he is a flight risk. Throughout his time at Frontier, Chase has experienced significant growth, mainly due to the extra attention he receives. This growth would be impossible without the structure that the school environment provides, as Chase requires structure and routine to flourish. Since school was canceled in March, the Peoria Unified School District has done their best to communicate with parents as a whole, but I feel the parents of special needs students, which is by no means insignificant, have been left to their own devices. I understand the plans are being formulated for both in-person and virtual settings, but there has been a little, if any, communication regarding special needs students and their options. For children like Chase, the virtual option is a non-starter. It will not work. Many parents, including those of both typical and special needs children, are in a bind. Some stay at home to provide the necessary care for their children. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only stripped the children's ability to attend school, but it has also severely impacted our ability to secure any at-home services and care. I understand that the board has some tough decisions to make in a very small window to make them. I am not suggesting that in-person school sessions are the answer for everyone, but there is a particular segment of the population that desperately needs the accommodation. Special needs classrooms are by and large significantly smaller than typical classes. The students are generally contained. I apologize. The students are generally contained and free from the need to have significant movement throughout the school during the day. I believe their health needs, as well as the limited staff that would be needed to attend to them, can be controlled. In closing, I'm asking that you strongly consider the needs of this unique group of students and the many benefits that in-person instruction provides to both students and their families. If you elect to go to a strictly virtual environment for typical students, please explore the option of offering an in-person climate for those with special needs. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you, Ms. Airy. The next public comments from Kimberly Osborne. To the PUSD governing board members, thank you for considering my concerns. I am the mother of 2 students who go to PUSD schools. One child is in high school and the other one is in 8th grade. My concern is that I have heard that you are leaning heavily on not opening on-site learning for the first quarter, which would be through the middle of October. That means that every student would be doing online learning for the first quarter. Such a decision would defeat the purpose of having options for in-person instruction or online learning. I can't understand why you would offer options and then not actually provide the options. Many are of the opinion that it is not safe to go back on campus, but there is ample evidence that it is safe as safety protocols are put in place, which the district has outlined. Several scientific studies show that children are not susceptible to COVID-19. Other studies show that children do not pass COVID-19 on to adults. Also, a reputable study done in Germany, German schools have been open to in-person learning, found that there were no major coronavirus hotspots because of having on-site learning. Then there are other studies that speak of detrimental mental and physical consequences for children from not having in-person learning. Personally, my 7th grade child has had many meltdowns doing online learning this last spring, and he is usually a happy-go-lucky guy. And my 5th grade nephew in New Mexico experienced depression because of online school. Considering all these studies, I feel strongly that you should keep in-person learning an option open to those parents who want their child to have school on-site be able to do so. I very much understand that many have fears for their children, their family's safety, and many of these fears are valid, especially if a family member is at high risk. For those families, I highly respect the decision to do an online learning. But at the same time, taking the option for an on-site learning away from those of us who don't have these concerns is not right or reasonable. I realize that there is concern for the teacher's safety as well, but I think the same principle applies. If there are teachers that are at risk, they could do the online teaching option. And for those teachers who are not in a high-risk category, they can do the in-person teaching option. Thank you for considering my concerns to give this option of on-campus learning as soon as the governor opens up schools. Respectfully, Kimberly Osborne. The next public comment is from Debbie Tabor. For the safety of our students and staff, please consider using public health benchmark data regarding COVID-19 and its containment to determine the opening of in-person learning. Choosing a specific date may need continual rescheduling of the opening date if the number of positive COVID cases rises again. The next public comment is from Walter Smith. To the superintendent and the PUSD board, it is up to you all today to postpone the in-person start of schools and decide for online education to continue through the first quarter. Students, teachers, classified staff, and all of their families have their health and safety in your hands. Online education will allow for students to still obtain the excellent education you always offer to your students, but with everyone's lives in mind. Returning to school is high risk, and maximum precautions will not guarantee that the school community is safe. In-person school will not look like what it used to, and it is not worth the risk. All I can do is sit here and watch while you all decide the fate of everyone here in PUSD. So I urge you to make the right decision, save the lives of those in your district. Do it for the high-risk, immunocompromised, and vulnerable people in our community, as well as for the healthy individuals that will all contract COVID-19. You have the power today to save lives, and we all call on you to save them by making the decision to have school online for at least the first quarter. The next public comment is from Abraham Williams. Dear PUSD board members and Superintendent Dr. Jason Reynolds, I just watched the governor and superintendent speak. As a teacher and a parent, I feel that we were just put out to dry. Wow, we have to wait until August 7th for their so-called benchmarks. Now, with this in mind, there isn't adequate time to come up with our plan by August 17th. Myself and fellow teachers of PUSD are now going to be put in harm's way of an unstoppable virus. Our government leaders use some of the guidelines from the CDC, but not all. High-risk situations in schools are defined with more than 10 and no social distancing, which is an extreme problem when you have 30-plus students in a class. I'm going to get on my hands and knees to beg the PUSD board to do the right thing and postpone in-person instruction through quarter one. This will prevent our district from being the guinea pig of the state. Let other unconscious districts make the mistake of welcoming all back before there is concrete data of student, teacher, and staff risk. There is nothing wrong with being cautious in this playing field. Lives of our students and teachers and staff are something that we shouldn't be gambling with. Quarter one will give us the time we need. The next public comment is from Christy Gordon. As an educator in the Peoria Unified School District, I am writing once again to express my concern for my students, my colleagues, and myself. I feel that Peoria Unified has lost its standing as a leader in education and find that we are leading from behind. Rather than being among the first districts, in the state to ensure the safety of their staff and students, we have continued to kick the can down the road so that we are now among the last of the larger districts to make a decision. Governor Ducey, Superintendent Hoffman, and Dr. Chris talked about metrics and how they will set benchmarks for opening schools in last night's press conference. However, we are not seeing enough of a downward trend. Dr. Chris also stated that the WHO suggests an infection rate of less than 5% before opening schools. With a backlog of tests and the fact that it takes nearly 2 weeks to get the results from testing, how can we honestly say that it is safe to open our schools? I understand that you have been asked to do the impossible, especially now with the additional requirement of providing some sort of place for in-person learning starting August 17th. Governor Ducey is not making decisions. He is putting that on our district, not only in regards to when it will be safe to open schools, but also in the requirements for masks. Not much has changed from his original executive order on June 24th, except now there is an additional $100 million in CARES Act funding available for schools in Arizona. Please, for the safety and sanity of your staff and parents, make a call to extend online learning through at least the first quarter. There is no way that we will go from our current 25 to 30% infection rate, depending on the length of time, 7, 10, 30 days at which you are looking, down to the 5% recommended by the WHO by October. Our parents deserve time to be able to plan for their children, and our staff deserve the time for quality instruction, to plan for quality instruction. Please do what Governor has been unable to do, but what is right for our students and staff, and delay the start of in-person learning until at least the end of the first quarter one. Thank you, Christy Gordon. The next public comment is from Trina Berg. President Sandoval, members of the board, Superintendent Reynolds. My name is Trina Berg, and I am speaking today as the president of the Peoria Education Association. I urge you today to vote to not go back to full in-person learning until health metrics are set that are science-based and show significant community spread decline. I also urge you to have very clear guidelines of how we will meet Governor Ducey's executive order for providing an in-person education to our most vulnerable students. These guidelines need to be created and communicated quickly because there are many ways that we can meet this requirement without having direct instruction to full classrooms. Although I don't think an exact date is important, meeting health metrics is. Providing a minimum date to have all virtual and provide plans to staff and parents is vitally important. I ask that you make the date at least Labor Day so that families, staff, and students can start to make long-term plans. If the metrics are created and met before then, we can begin a transition earlier, but having that time would at least allow uncertainty to settle and give us that needed planning time. Thank you for your time. The next public comment is from Rory Westfall. Board members, as a teacher and parent, I do not feel safe returning to the classroom or having my freshmen return to high school. Dr. Chris in the press conference yesterday recommended that we socially distance 6 feet apart, don't get into a big group, and be in a well-ventilated area like outside. A classroom setting meets none of these recommendations. Please be proactive for the safety of students, teachers, and staff by having the district do online learning until the second quarter. Other districts have made similar decisions in order to keep their community safe. Peoria has been a leader, so please take a strong, bold stance to protect students, teachers, and staff. Thank you for your time. The last public comment is from Patricia Zint. Once the benchmarks for returning to school are met, what will be the timeline for returning to classrooms? Will we return the next day? Are teachers expected to be on call for return at a moment's notice? And that concludes the public comment for this line item.
Thank you, Ms. Contra, for reading all of those, and team for executing on the timer. Really appreciate that. That said, Dr. Reynolds, as always, Dr. Reynolds and team, please make it a point to respond to all these individuals, via email, thanking them for their comments and their concerns and their input. There's no doubt, our charge fundamentally as a district is to, keep kids in school, while maintaining safe, supportive, and inspiring environments, right? And I'm going to really bold safe. So that said, our communication is very important, and I think it needs to be very frequent and comprehensive to ensure that our parents, students, teachers, staff, are always in the know of what is going on and have clarity on what our next steps are. So that, again, if you can just make sure that each of these individuals do get a response, we would truly appreciate it.
We certainly.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on to section 4, action items. 4.1, reopening of schools for in-person instruction. Dr. Reynolds, I want to hand this over to you to allow you to lead us into the discussion. And I know there's some that came out of the press conference yesterday, a couple items that have helped us determine our way forward. So I definitely want to hear from you.
Well, thank you, President Sandoval, and good morning to our entire governing board and our staff and community members, parents, students who are up early this morning and joining us. I want to begin by again saying thank you to all of our employees for your hard work during this summer and preparing for the opening of school. Next week, we begin to welcome our teachers back, who are going to have to hit the ground running in a way that many of us have not done since we were first-year teachers. They are going to need to quickly ramp up on their learning for our new virtual learning tools and be ready to welcome our students back for virtual learning on August 5th. I want to thank our parents and our communities, our staff members, for sharing your thoughts with us. That feedback loop is important, and it does help guide our decision making. I also want to quickly thank our governing board for your wisdom in postponing the meeting we had scheduled for Tuesday. It was important for us to hear the governor's announcement in order to inform our next steps. And so, again, thank you for that. Each week, as I have been communicating with parents and community members and staff members and some students, the concept of establishing a date to reopen our schools comes up pretty consistently. And what I've been trying to explain to them is that I understand the desire to have a specific date. It helps us plan. It gives us peace of mind. There's a variety of reasons why I can understand the desire to do that. But this virus has not yet responded to any date. And so I really work with them on the concept that we need to use the data to drive our decision making and shift our thinking from a specific date to using benchmarks, to using the data to determine when it is safe to open up schools. And that's exactly what we heard from Governor Ducey and his team yesterday. I was very pleased to hear him commit to providing school districts with what we have been asking for months, and that is the benchmarks and the data that we can use to determine when it is appropriate to open our school facilities to face-to-face instruction. So now that we have that commitment for the benchmarks and the data, we can begin to use that to better prepare and inform our families and staff for what learning is going to look like for the future. I would also this morning like to announce that I have asked our team to put together a group of health experts to help us both review the benchmarks that Governor Ducey committed to, as well as compare those benchmarks to our community data and guide us as we determine when it is appropriate and safe to open up for face-to-face learning. So I'm excited to put that team together and begin working with them quickly to better inform our decision making. We were also told yesterday that we will have those benchmarks on August 7th. So in order for us to have the adequate time to convene our team of medical and health experts, review the benchmarks and the data, and make a recommendation, and then as well be able to prepare our schools for the potential opening to face-to-face learning, I am recommending, based on the work of our team, that we extend virtual learning through Labor Day. And that first day then would be, I believe, September 8th. I need our parents and staff and students in our community to know that their physical, their mental, and their emotional health is our first priority. We are committed to that. We also are committed to providing our students with a rigorous and engaging learning environment, regardless of whether it is in person or virtual. We all want our schools' facilities to be open to in-person learning. We want our students back. We want what we had before this virus took it away. But we must do this in the safest manner possible, and we are also committed to that. So I want to say again, thank you to our community for your feedback, for your advocacy, for your support. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. President Sandoval.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll go along the line that we usually do, but I do have a really quick question for you. So once we receive the benchmarks and, it is, and they are, our numbers are below those, and it is deemed based on resident experts, the data, the science, our own protocols, our own layers of safety, that it is safe to get into our phase 2, right, which is the face-to-face learning. I would highly recommend that we give, our students, teachers, staff, families ample time to transition, right? So meaning, at least a minimum of 2 weeks once we say, we're going to open schools, to be able to plan and adapt for that face-to-face learning. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and I think when we look at how we would come back, that 2-week period is approximately what we have estimated as the time we would need to bring to get our resources where they need to be, to move our teachers where they need to be, and to be able to open to face-to-face instruction successfully. So that matches perfectly with your request.
Thank you for that. Okay, we'll go along the line. Ms. Stone, comments, questions?
Well, I'm just gonna flat out say I'm very disappointed that we're not opening sooner. All the studies I have read indicate that opening the schools would be one of the safest things that we can do to reopen the country. Go to Walmart. It's full of people. It's full of children. It's full of old people. It's full of everybody. That's all this stuff. And it's like life has to start somewhere. And the passage of, I've read all these studies and that have been studied in the school environment. The rate at which those exposed become infected below 20 is like 5.5%, and they don't pass it on. We have in this state we've experienced a spike, but it's not resulting in a lot of deaths or anything like that. We have most of the ICU admissions and things are still among those that are quite a bit older. The latest statistic I read was 0.3 deaths per 1,000 cases in Arizona. That was this month. Our children are at risk. We have at-risk children. We have a lot of emotional issues with some of our kids. We have a lot of children that are not handling this all that well, and we have a lot of needs amongst our students. And I would like to get back to meeting in person for those that desire to. I think the online option for those that would rather be at home for this time is wonderful. But I believe that the option for in-person meetings needs to be there as soon as we possibly can. And I think that's the 17th. I'm very disappointed with putting this off farther. The science doesn't really support it, because the young people are the healthiest, and they don't transmit the coronavirus like older people do. And our teachers, by and large, are younger than the at-risk age, and those that don't want to, could be involved more with the online learning and keep themselves safer that way, or those that are more at risk at an older age, or with conditions that require it. But I think we're putting our students at risk by not opening the schools. That's what I think. It's a dangerous thing to do. You're going to be getting kids left at home alone because the parents have to work or things like that, and the kids are not going to be getting the education that we've promised them. We all can tout this online learning to the heavens, and I am very grateful for it, and I think that it's a good thing. But I think also that it's only going to work for some students. there are many students that are going to be left behind with this with the online thing, and I believe in giving parents the choice and giving students a choice. And in that, staff would also have choice. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Ms. Stone, for those comments. Dr. Reynolds and team, any questions or any responses there? I mean, there is no doubt, we do have a very diverse student population. When I say diverse, I think one of the commentaries was around our ESS students, and one of the public comments, our more vulnerable students, ones that are always a student population that is always top of mind for me are McKinney-Vento and homeless students. Dr. Reynolds, can you or someone from your team speak to, I know you're continuing to work the plan, but and this question comes up often, but speak a little bit to how we're going to address our more vulnerable kids.
Thank you for that, President Sandoval, Mrs. Doan. The recommendation to move our date to just past Labor Day is a decision based on allowing us the appropriate time to get those benchmarks and use the team that I have recommended that we put together and ask that we get that done as soon as possible. It allows us the appropriate time to get the benchmarks, review the benchmarks, understand the benchmarks, and then determine whether or not the data that we also receive meets those benchmarks for that safety piece. So that is where we came to the date of Labor Day and not any later. When it comes to our most vulnerable, as we continue to work, we are taking a phased in approach to this, and those students that are high risk or at risk that Mrs. Doan mentioned and you talked about, President Sandoval, are top of mind for us. And we are currently working through plans and scenarios where we could potentially phase back in opportunities to bring students onto campus in small groups with teachers and staff. So in the executive order as well, yesterday remained the requirement for schools to explore having spaces for students to go to who might need things like Wi-Fi or technology, and might need support in their virtual learning. And so our team is reviewing that. Again, we've only had the executive order for a little over 12 hours, so we're digesting all of that and adjusting in our timelines to be able to meet those needs.
Is smart. So thank you for the response, Ms. Underhill.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Dr. Reynolds, for kind of explaining that approach, and I do appreciate the emphasis on data rather than a date. I think that the whole date thing kind of got us all off track, so I definitely appreciate that. And you did kind of touch on some of my questions, because one thing I'm curious about is, being able to, if, say, we have data that shows that we're ready to go sooner, I recognize that we have a big ship to turn around, and I do understand the need to prepare, but I do also want us to continue to try to find ways and be innovative in meeting the needs of some of those vulnerable students. So I'm happy to hear that we would have some opportunities potentially even within that period of, monitoring the data and planning to potentially bring on, on campus some of those kids in those very vulnerable situations. I would also like to, make the point that I agree wholeheartedly that it's super important to get our kids back into in-person learning, and that if we have an opportunity to provide some hands-on connections for kids through sports and extracurricular, through labs, through those kinds of things, that we utilize those opportunities not only obviously for the benefit of the kids, but for us as we learn to kind of operate in this new environment. So I do appreciate that very much. I had a couple of questions on the executive order. You talked a little bit about providing the free on-site learning. I know that is still scheduled to start for August 17th. In regard to that, do we have any idea on how we anticipate gauging the numbers of children that we'll need to be providing this for, and who will care for them and how?
So we're working through all of those scenarios right now, based on the executive order from yesterday. What our current thinking and what we have been planning for is exactly what you just mentioned: reaching out and finding out where that need is, and then looking to see based on what that need is. Clearly it will be very difficult for us to bring back large numbers of students to a campus, given that our teachers are teaching their virtual learning classes. But we do have an opportunity potentially to reallocate some of our staff members from around the district to support those environments. So we're currently looking at square footage. We're evaluating what spaces we may have to be able to do that, and what staff we have to be able to do that, and then that will most likely dictate what we're able to do.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess I also wanted to just talk a little bit about, so the idea of returning September 8th, I see that would provide us, additional time to see if our numbers are coming down, and that kind of thing. I think it's also, somewhat wise in that it gives us a chance for our virtual, our online virtual curriculum to become familiar to a lot of our students, in the instance that we should potentially have another spike and have to close down in the future. So I know that for some parents that's not ideal, but I do think that would be a valuable utilization of that time. Sorry, so much information. I was also curious about the budget implications on the new executive order. I know they talked about there being some different options around the 40th day, ADM, et cetera. It sounds like if we are to go with this Labor Day as our sort of, date, although our data date, that we would be within the realm of the 40 days to start up in-person learning. And I just wanted to clarify if that is correct.
Thank you for that. I'll ask our CFO, Ms. Michelle Myers, to help us with that question.
Well, thank you, President Sandoval, Mrs. Underhill, members of the governing board. We've previously shared that there is funding under the CARES Act and additional funding from the state and the governor's office, and both in-person and distance learning funding is now covered. And so we are confident with this option that's being considered, it would not impact the funding that we would be eligible for under the 40th day model and the stabilization grant that has been published, and we expect the application to be available in the near future. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. At this time, I'll yield to my other members.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill, for the questions, and Dr. Reynolds and team for the responses. Ms. Pingarelli, I have a favor to ask. I totally forgot that Ms. Saya has a hard stop at 10. Would you mind if I skipped over to her for any questions or comments that she may have at this point?
Oh, no problem.
All right, thank you for that. Ms. Saya Martinez?
Yes, thank you very much, Governing Board, President Sandoval, and Administration. I just want to start off, I want to take some time and again acknowledge all our teachers, staff, parents, students, and community members for your patience and comments. Please know that that we bring all of your voices, as you could hear clearly, to the conversation. I have noted, and it has been very clear when I look through this pandemic, that there is some silver lining, that we have been blessed with a very skilled community from all professions, from medical to logistics to legal and to finance, and everyone is sharing their expertise. I look forward to how we can continue to partner as we continue our relationship for years to come. I want to take an extra moment to thank our administration as well as our governing board for consistency and integrity throughout this process. Though delaying this meeting was not optimal, and for me, it created an additional set of emotions. I appreciate making decisions based on the most up-to-date information presented by our governor and state superintendent. It is definitely not easy for anyone, and it's not over. With this in mind, I recognize we are in an unprecedented public health crisis, and as a governing board member leading the 4th largest district in the state of Arizona in regards to education, fact or fiction, I want to be very upfront on how I personally and professionally am making decisions. One, based on the most up-to-date data, policy that the Peoria Unified Governing Board has, and I am taking a more conservative approach by erring on the side of caution. We've heard a lot of data. We've received a lot of data articles on both sides of the argument, and anyone can argue and cherry pick the data on which they want to make decisions. It is reassuring that Peoria Unified and our superintendent, Dr. Reynolds, has come up with a strategic plan by creating our own medical task force so that we can make appropriate decisions aligned for Peoria Unified. If you take a look at the state's website, you will see that Peoria has some hot spots, and so does the city of Glendale. And we have other towns that we work with within our within our guidelines. So to me, that is reassuring. And it has been very clear that the state leadership has developed guidance that allows Peoria Unified to support parent choice and public health. We do not want to compromise anybody's life as we continue to move forward, and we're going to use those statistics to drive decisions. Now, Dr. Reynolds, you presented a lot of information. I appreciate that. As we continue to listen to our community and you create your task force, here are my asks. A phased-in approach. As we meet our first benchmark, that we bring in our most vulnerable population as described by our state superintendent at yesterday's press conference, including our special ed, our ESL students, and so on. Once we've met the first benchmark in the phase 1, we transition into phase 2, and so on and so on. With that in mind, I am comfortable with making decisions and working with the board and administration of moving the date as appropriate as it supports public health. In addition to that, communication, I've heard time and time again, and as a parent myself of 2 students in high school and in elementary, communication is timely, and at times it can be overwhelming and confusing. I would like to ask that our administration team look into creating a live interactive benchmark posted on our website and our Facebook page so that our community can have the most up-to-date data, as well as weekly pulse checks either from you or our board president or even our PR director with the up-to-date information on how we plan to move forward, if there are any additional meetings or platforms. And then the last piece, which we haven't talked much about, and Ms. Underhill, you did bring it up. I want to talk about finances because I do want to acknowledge our governor and our state superintendent for that increased flexibility in identifying educators as essential workers. I know I've heard time and time again that essential workers are getting pay increases. And since we have all, I believe, agreed that educators are essential workers, Ms. Myers, have you heard any feedback or stance that we are expecting a pay increase since we are now identified as essential workers? President
Sandoval, Mrs. Eja Martinez, members of the governing board, The definition of essential worker has been used with our teachers and staff. At this time, I am not aware of additional funding for pay increases related to that, but there is a common agreement that the role they serve is essential. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And so as my community continues to bring the attention to us, my ask for the community is to advocate for our essential workers, including our educators, for that additional funding as we transition to an in-class person experience. Second, we have not talked about our insurance. We are currently with Valley Schools, and we are self-funded. If I recall, recently last year, we reallocated $6 million to other needs within our district, depleting a little bit of our bucket of money in that space. Now, with that being said, about 10% of our employees utilize 90% of those expenses. How is a potential coronavirus, COVID-19 or illness is going to impact, or what do you foresee in our insurance space? Or do you see any reimbursement as a result of COVID call-outs when we go back to in-person?
President Sandoval, Mrs. A. Martinez, members of the governing board, you're referencing our medical insurance group with Valley Schools, and that is our health and dental benefits. And for our renewal for this year, the impacts of COVID were considered, and any outcomes were part of our renewal for fiscal year 2021. Of course, we look at one fiscal year at a time, but we are not expecting for fiscal year 2021 any unexpected costs, as we've already put our renewal in place. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Is there a plan in place to have updates or frequent checks with Valley Schools as we proceed in the new year?
President Sandoval, Mrs. A. Martinez, members of the governing board, we have quarterly meetings with Valley Schools. In fact, I do sit on their board representing the district, as well as regular communication from Valley Schools with updates. So yes, we do have regular communication, and we will pass those communications on to the board as appropriate. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And so as we continue forward, and I've been clear on requesting that safety is priority. When the time comes to go live, I would like to ensure or provide some financial information or medical costs, even to the board as we move forward, like a board report, or even to our staff of potential impacts. So thank you for that additional insight. With that being said, I appreciate the more clear direction, Dr. Reynolds, that you are providing as we move forward. I still want to continue to encourage our community members to contact us. We also have forms if you're interested in serving on committees that is available on the website. And just to follow up, I mentioned policy. To reiterate our point, the Peoria Unified Governing Board has a policy, GBGCB. It is the policy that the school district take responsible and lawful measures to protect students and staff members from the transmission of communicable diseases. The superintendent is authorized to adopt such procedures as necessary to implement this policy in a manner that consistent with the state and federal laws. And again, as we move forward, I see that we will be creating procedures aligned to that policy. And with that, I stand.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah Martinez, for the commentary and comprehensive questions. Moving on, Ms. Pingerelli, thank you for your flexibility. We'll hand the mic over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. For us to develop a plan to reopen our schools for on-site instruction, we should agree upon clear and realistic objectives. I believe the majority of our district's families and teachers would agree with me that any plan must address the following objectives. Number one, at-risk populations vulnerable to the virus must be protected. 2, parents with school-aged children must be able to go to work. 3, to ensure the best possible academic outcomes, children need to continue with their education in person to the greatest extent possible. 4, provide parents with a choice of instruction. Given these objectives, formulating a safe plan relies on the latest data from the Center for Disease Control for Arizona. The CDC has already provided data for Arizona regarding the impact of COVID-19 on different age groups. Traditionally, parents with school-aged children rely on our schools to educate them while they are working. We must strive to maintain that traditional relationship during this pandemic to the best of our ability. That means having students on our campuses for instruction. To address the fears of contracting the virus that some families have, we offer them the option of effective online instruction, which maximizes student-teacher interaction. The governing board has already approved software and teacher training for such instruction. For everyone else, we should plan to open our schools to on-site instruction as soon as the governor permits and as the Academy of Pediatrics has recommended. That is what we should do as responsible board members and representatives of the community which we serve. I'm empathetic and understand everyone's fears, including my own, and the dramatic changes that this pandemic has caused in all of our lives, including those who have confronted the tragedy of losing a loved one. We're all trying to arrive at the best decisions. But for the benefit of our children's education, their future, and the future of our district's families, many struggling financially, I believe we must weigh the risk of reopening our schools as soon as possible against the deleterious consequences of keeping them closed for on-site instruction. Again, I would like to say again, we should plan to open our schools to on-site instruction as soon as the governor permits after August 17th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Pingarelli, for your words. I think one of the things that you just said about, I think we're all here, with the same focus to ensure the success of our students, certainly teachers, staff, and families. As I said earlier, our main goal is to keep kids in school, within a safe, supportive, and inspiring environment. And there's no doubt, right now with this pandemic and being in these uncharted waters, there's still a lot that's not known, right? We see the numbers increasing. I think patients are unfortunately passing in ways that we haven't seen before and presenting in ways that we haven't seen before. So with the governor's, press conference yesterday and the commitment to focusing on the data, the science, and, Dr. Reynolds and team, applying, local, layers of safety, from a logistical perspective, overall operations, and tied to this industry, right? I am confident that, as we move forward as a district, to understand when that time is appropriate and really safe to open our doors. I don't disagree with Ms. Sam Martinez in taking a phased approach. Ms. Pingarelli, I absolutely agree with you that sooner is better, but we need to ensure that we allow the data science, the resident experts, the team that Dr. Reynolds and team are putting together, help guide us to make informed and responsible and sound decisions on behalf of all the humans that we're responsible for. We we talk about our district being, 41,000 plus human beings, which includes all of our associates, meaning employee groups, and our students. And then you multiply that with a factor of approximately, 2.5 average size household. I mean, we're responsible for over 100,000 human lives. For me, I couldn't in good conscience compromise the health and wellness of any of these individuals in light of just the many unknowns that we are still trying to answer, the experts are trying to answer with regard to this pandemic. But that said, we will have some benchmarks to, be more informed and about to determine, when it is safe to open our schools. And I think that's the message, right? Ms. Underhill mentioned, the commitment to a date that kind of, I think, steered us off path a little bit. I think really the communication is that we will not open our schools until it is safe. That's Ms. Underhill, I see your hand raised there. Did you have a quick comment?
No, you go ahead. I'll wait.
Okay, perfect. No, thank you for that. So that said, Dr. Reynolds, based on your recommendation, your and team and the district's recommendation, am I hearing that you recommend that we do not open our schools before the Labor Day weekend with everything that we need to consider to be able to do so effectively, efficiently, and safely?
That is our recommendation.
Okay. For me personally, I know this is an action item that is, I absolutely support that, knowing that you won't have the data, the benchmarks until August 7th. And as you work backwards with your timeline, that certainly seems like a timeline that is conducive to making, again, sound and appropriate decisions on behalf of all of the human lives that we are responsible for. Ms. Underhill.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, it was kind of what I was getting at, is just, from my standpoint, I'm just wondering if, we again are not trying to get stuck on a date. And so I guess I'm just wondering is, if we have, by some miracle, find that we are actually reaching those benchmarks prior to September 8th, well prior, perhaps. Will we have flexibility to, as one of our, teachers mentioned in our public comments, to transition earlier if, we're in a good position. Now, I recognize that the data and the backlog, et cetera, doesn't necessarily indicate that we might be there as soon as we all are hoping. But I just wanted to see, are we in our minds having a little bit of flexibility around an earlier transition, if possible, at least with, some of those special groups?
So, Mrs. Underhill, yes, of course, we are committed to exactly what has been said several times, and that is opening as soon as we possibly can do so in a manner that is safe for our students and our staff. And so as we look at that, there is a possibility that could happen when I plan out and think about getting the benchmarks on August 7th, and then convening the team to be able to look at that and give them the appropriate time to provide us guidance, and then to say, okay, we're going to open on September 8th. A lot has to happen on the back end in order to prepare to open. And so that's why we have identified that date. But to your point, if there were a reason, or if there were a way that we could be ready sooner, that might be a possibility.
Great. Thank you for that. And I also just wanted to reiterate, and I think this has already been addressed, but that we will continue to, really strive as a district to not, to lead from a standpoint of innovation and looking at ways that we can bring students safely to campus for various, ways to connect, be it small groups, be it labs, be it sports, be it other extracurricular activities, which, a lot of students are what motivate them to go to school. So I guess I would just hope that, within that closure, we would still continue to charge ourselves with the innovation of reaching those kids directly in some way, shape, or form within the safety guidelines.
And that is absolutely part of our plan.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Martinez, I apologize. Real quick, I want to make a quick comment with some of that Ms. Underhill just stated. When you work backwards, from Labor Day to today, right? And really the date that you received the information from our state, the benchmarks, right? And then the time to make the announcement and then give that 2 weeks to all of our stakeholders to adapt. I do feel that, committing to, at this point anyway, not open our schools prior to Labor Day weekend for that reason, in addition to allowing our teachers to spend, at least, a month with this online platform that we have invested in. And here's my thought. If we give them that amount of time to really engage with the platform, learn it well, inside and out, become proficient with the platform. If and when, we realize an outbreak and we have to go online again, and we won't have the liberty of ramp time to allow individuals to, learn this platform, and we have to move quickly on a dime. I just feel that that amount of time gives them that opportunity to truly absorb the platform, learn it, and be able to reinstate it, very quickly in the time of need. So that said, Ms. Sam Martinez.
Yes, I was going to add, and it goes along with Ms. Underhill and your comment, Mr. Sandoval, which was time and communication. I am for having the data support opening early, but I think about some of my original comments was with academic growth requires structure, consistency, and sustainability, which leads me to your comment, President Sandoval, is having to go back and forth will be challenging for that academic growth piece and undue stress to our students as well as our parents. So Dr. Reynolds, as we move forward, I would like to hear how we're going to approach that. In addition to that information, I just lost my train of thought, but I will stand there because I forgot what I was going to say, but it sounds to me that what I'm hearing is in good order to use data to make the decision. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Sayal Martinez. We will absolutely, I am 100% committed to ensuring that this board and our community have up-to-date information and understand our plan as we move forward. So please know that that is a priority of mine and the entire team.
Of course. Thank you for that. I think, in addition to, I want to piggyback on something that Ms. Sayal Martinez brought up around the policy. One thing that I would like to recommend my fellow governing board members is to allow the district to bring back to us in our next board meeting the resolution that we signed and voted on as we closed schools at the end of the last academic year. I do believe that in light of the fluidity of what is going on, in light of the benchmarks, that we will guide us. And again, the science, the data, and the resident experts. I feel that we need to give Dr. Reynolds and team the autonomy, the ability to make decisions on when to open the schools very quickly, right? Where, we won't have to call a special board meeting to vote. Now, what I'm not saying is, and I think Dr. Reynolds has been very, very diligent, if you will, on ensuring that all of us are always informed, by calling us, frequently, on what the district is thinking about and what they're doing. I don't see that changing at all. So what I'm not saying is that not without, some phone call to the board, but I do feel that we need to give the district the autonomy to be able to make that decision very fluidly, very quickly, by reinstating that resolution. So that said, I do need a motion. Ms. Sarah Martinez, you have a hand raised. Did you remember what you wanted to say?
Yes, I did. Your statement helped me remember. And what I was going to add, and it was exactly that, but that if our administration brings forward a resolution, I would also like to see the contingency plan on how we're going to move forward in making those calls. So before I want to agree to a resolution, I want to see what the plan of action is and benchmarks to determine that making that call at a moment's notice. So that's my ask going forward, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Pingrelli?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple other things. I was one of the board members that I wanted to wait to hear what Governor Ducey had to say. And, I just want to say that I'm extremely disappointed that with all of the expertise at hand in the state, that a recommendation for benchmarks was not given, and that it was put off to August 7th. And in terms of the resolution, I would never vote for that, to give authority over to administration from the governing board. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I think for me, and I absolutely respect your comment there, Ms. Pingrelli, is they are in the weeds every day and having conversations with those experts, therefore more informed on making that decision. I just feel that, again, give them that ability to make a quick decision on, putting our students in the best position to be successful quickly is appropriate. But I do appreciate your comment. Thank you for that. With that said, any other discussion, Ms. Stone?
Well, I would like to read something from the American Academy of Pediatrics. It says, as state and local governments try to resume classroom learning in the fall, it's important not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If a school has difficulty meeting all of the guidelines, it should not be forced to reopen, but also should not be prevented from resuming classes. Children are notoriously uncompliant with following procedural rules, and ultimately it may be futile asking adolescents, much less kindergartners, to walk in certain directions or to keep masks on their faces for hours a day. Children are at low risk themselves and present low risk to others, even if they have trouble following all the mitigation rules. At the same time, keeping children at home might expose them to considerable risks to their educational progress, their mental health, their nutrition, and alarmingly, even their safety and welfare. One of the most important goals of reopening the country is resuming some degree of regular school life for the nation's children. Considering the low risks of COVID-19 for school children, in-person schooling this fall may be one of the safest activities we can restart. Considering the risks of isolating children at home, it may be negligent of us not to, and that is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So I consider that that is up to date. That's not old information.
Thank you for that, Ms. Stone. Ms. Pingerelli, you have your hand raised. Ms. Underhill?
I just wanted to say that, I do understand that there's a lot of information, coming from our medical community, and we have new CDC guidelines that were just put out as well. And so there, obviously there is a lot of information, and I think we all agree that getting our kids back in school is the most important thing that we can do for them, for their social emotional well-being, for their physical well-being, for all those things. And I also think that we've come to a place where we're letting data determine, when that will be safe for our kids and for everybody in our community. So I just want to say that I don't discount that information whatsoever. I think having additional time will allow us to catch up with some of those guidelines that are also, coming forth as we continue to learn. So I think that's important. And then the last thing I wanted to say is just that, I've often heard people say in Arizona, we should start school after Labor Day because of the heat, because it's very challenging to go outside with children during, this first part of the year and those kinds of things. So I think that, if we can get our mind around, that this might possibly be one of the things that we look at as an innovation in education as we're going forward, especially if we are able to, introduce some distance learning with, integrity and quality and the robust rigor that we're looking for, that it might be something that, propels us to look at our calendar in general. And there could be cost savings around air conditioning and that kind of thing as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Underhill. Mrs. Pingerelli, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, I forgot to lower it.
No worries. I wanted to make sure that you're able to make additional comment. Thank you for that, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Sarah Martinez, any final comments?
I am good. Thank you very much, President Sandoval.
Thank you. So with that said, this is an action item. And Dr. Reynolds, as we take a look at this action item, and what I do need is a motion to direct the district to and really give them that autonomy to not move into our phase 2 face-to-face model until after Labor Day weekend. Based on all the information that Dr. Reynolds just mentioned, the timeline from the state to cascade down the benchmarking, their time to plan accordingly and communicate to all of our stakeholders. That seems like an appropriate timeline to begin to consider that phase 2 of the face-to-face instruction based on the data, the benchmarks, and the science, right, and those resident experts. So that said, I do need a motion to direct the district on not opening schools prior to the Labor Day weekend.
President Sandoval?
Yes.
I move to delay the start of in-person school till after Labor Day, with the caveat presenting benchmarks to the board for further consideration to open schools in person.
Okay.
Second.
So, Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Sarah Martinez and a second by Ms. Underhill.
And President Sandoval?
Yes, ma'am.
So in that, I would like that it could open before September 8th, if at all possible.
Okay. Dr. Reynolds, we have a few, specifics in this motion. Is is it appropriate, and hopefully it is, to allow us to direct the district to not open sooner than, with, obviously those caveats. If we're prepared earlier, then we will. But at a minimum, we'll stay. We will not move into phase 2 until after the Labor Day weekend. I just want to make sure that we motion this correctly.
Thank you, President Sandoval. So I believe the motion was made by Mrs. Ceja Martinez.
Yeah.
She would like to amend her motion based on that feedback. She can. If not, then we would need to, I believe then that Mrs. Pingarelli would have a motion to amend the motion.
Okay. And we vote on both motions after the amendment, or do we need a voice vote now since there's a motion on the floor that's been?
So I think we first need a comment from Mrs. Ceja Martinez if she would like to change her motion.
President Sandoval?
Yes, ma'am.
I recognize the administration's recommendation was after Labor Day, so I'm going to keep my motion as presented and recommended by the administration.
Okay. Ms. Underhill, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to get clarification on Ms. Ceja Martinez's motion, because what she said was to delay until after Labor Day with the caveat of data being presented to the board. So in my mind, I just want to clarify, does that mean that there's a caveat that if we reach such stated benchmarks prior and our medical advisory committee agrees and we have appropriate time to transition our students safely, that we could open earlier?
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. And that's the way I interpreted Dr. Reynolds' recommendations. So if I need to state that in a different way, Dr. Reynolds, can you please chime in and identify what the motion should read?
Well, I think that with Mrs. Pingarelli's feedback, that what Mrs. Underhill just said would potentially be that motion. I think the only thing that your motion might be missing is that caveat that if we could open, we would consider it.
Okay, so then I retract my statement. So let me just restate that I will like my motion to read that we will that I move to begin in-person school as recommended by our administration as a result of the benchmarks put in place and a date determined based on timely communication and that data, whether it be before Labor Day or after Labor Day, but driven by the benchmarks. Does that help?
Yeah, Dr. Reynolds, Ms. Ceja Martinez, fellow board members, I'm wondering if the motion should read that we are directing the district to phase 2, not sooner than Labor Day weekend, pending, benchmarks from the state and our ability to execute in a safe and efficient manner. Thoughts?
That sounds way better than the way I put it, President Sandoval. So, Ms. Contra, I was hoping that you caught Mr. Sandoval's statement, and I would like my motion to read as he stated.
Thank you, Mrs. Ceja Martinez. President Sandoval, I have been listening, and I am amending the motion at this point to read, motion to move to direct the district to postpone the reopening of in-person instruction until after September 7th, 2020, with the caveat of data being presented to the board prior to this date, reflecting that it is safe to reopen sooner. I'm sorry, or you can certainly repeat what you said and I will try to get that down.
Yeah, so I think the first part of it is right? We're directing the district to not open in our phase 2 face-to-face instruction before Labor Day weekend, right? So that's good. Pending benchmarking data from the states, resident experts, science data, and our ability to open both safely and efficiently.
So pending benchmark data from the state.
Outcomes from our resident experts, that the group that Dr. Reynolds spoke about earlier. Science. And our ability to do so safely and efficiently. Which means, if the data's out, we assess it, and the data is within or below those guidelines, then we're on the clock, right? And we start executing and communicating and everything that is within the timeline that Dr. Reynolds spoke about earlier. And if that results in our ability to open sooner, then great. But if it doesn't, then we will not open sooner than that Labor Day weekend, and then allow the data to guide us.
Excellent. Thank you, President Sandoval. I understand exactly what you're saying. I just want to make sure for the motion purposes that I have it correct. So let me reread, please. Motion to direct the district to postpone the reopening of phase 2 in-person instruction until after September 7th, 2020, pending benchmark data from the state, outcomes from our resident experts, science, and our ability to do so safely and efficiently. Does that read correctly, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
And I would agree with that. I appreciate the assistance as community. We recognize this is a legal document and we want to make sure the wording is correct.
I want to make sure that that is clarified, that I'd just like to hear from Ms. Pingarelli to see if that's what she had meant.
I will be voting on it. Thanks.
Okay.
I guess I'm sorry, Ms. Concha, can you read that one more time?
Yes, Mrs. Underhill, I would be happy to. Motion to direct the district to postpone the reopening of phase 2 in-person instruction until after September 7th, 2020, pending benchmark data from the state, outcomes from our resident experts, science, and our ability to do so safely and efficiently.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering if the pending part is a little confusing. So I wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
So, Ms. Underhill, with that said, Ms. Saya made the motion. Does your second stand, or do I need to call for a second?
Sorry, it's the language. I think it would stand. No, hold on. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, are we saying that date or on such date that our community has, reached the benchmarks, we have the outcomes, and we are ready to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, if that's what that encompasses, then my second stands.
Yeah, in my mind, it's pending, right? The data, meaning, we will not open sooner than that date. Yes, if the data advises us to do so, right? And all the other variables and factors that we're going to consider before we open. And conversely, has the same impact if we realize the benchmarks and meet all those metrics sooner than we, like I said, we're on the clock and we start executing our plan to get into phase 2.
Okay. Then I stand with my second. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Sayre Martinez and a second by Ms. Underhill. Can you please run us through a voice vote?
Yes, sir. Thank you, President Sandoval. Mrs. Pingarelli,
Aye.
Mr. Sandoval,
Aye.
Mrs. Doan,
Nay.
Mrs. Sayre Martinez,
Aye.
Mrs. Underhill.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-1.
All right. Thank you, fellow board members. Ms. Contra, Dr. Reynolds, thank you both for your assistance as we went through this very important line item. So moving on, number 5, I know Ms. Sayre Martinez had hearts up at 10. I do need a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second? So Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Underhill, second by myself to adjourn the meeting. Can you please run us through a voice vote?
Thank you, President Sandoval. Yes, I am. I apologize for the delay. Mrs. Pingarelli,
Aye.
Mr. Sandoval,
Aye.
Mrs. Doan,
Aye.
Mrs. Sayre Martinez,
Aye.
and Mrs. Underhill.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned at 10:04.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Your candid conversation. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.